Right. So, have you ever noticed when you start a new chapter in your life, certain people just show up, and that's when you feel like it's divine timing? These are people who reflect parts of your own journey. These are people who help you see yourself more clearly. And that's exactly how I met Brittany McCauley. And I want to welcome you to the Unbound and Awakened podcast. I'm Poonam, your host for today's show. Brittany and I, we crossed paths while we were studying at the spiritual psychology school. And at that time, I was going through my own self discovery process. And from the very start, I knew that Brittany, there's something special about her spirit. You know, it's unshakable, I feel, because she has a heart that refuses to close, no matter what her situation is. And her story, I know, will inspire you. I've noticed that many women, when they go through any kind of heartbreak, they feel lost. They go through this place where they feel like they're not good enough. They lose themselves, they lose their voice, they don't know who they are anymore. And Brittany actually helps women like this. She helps them heal and she teaches them how to let go of the pain so they can feel strong again. And she uses writing as a medium to help them find themselves. And her personal journey it's again, it's one of courage. You'll hear that. She's a lifelong writer. She's found her way back into her craft after her own, divorce, and she's taken this on as a movement, and she's changed the entire trajectory of her life. She's also a certified meditation teacher. She's a breathwork coach, a Reiki practitioner, spiritual psychology coach, and E4 trauma facilitator. She's also the creator of the Right Mind Method. She lives in Denver, Colorado, with her partner and her second love, which is nature. Brittany and I, we share a lot in common. We actually apply very similar healing modalities in our respective practices. She focuses more on writing. Mine is more on past life regression and intergenerational trauma work, which you will later get to hear in our conversation. And before we dive into this powerful conversation today, I just want to take a moment to ground us in gratitude and allow the divine grace to flow through, and may it be a space where we're able to uncover stories, truths, and allow the listeners to feel inspired and expanded. So let's begin, Brittany. So I'm really honored to have you today in our show today. Welcome. How does it feel?
I am so excited to have this conversation with you today. I think you were one of the first people that I met when we were in our program together. And I remember right away just thinking, wow, I love Poonam's energies. She's just so calm and collected, and it feels safe. And she really knows what she's doing. And it was impressive. And that was like my first impression of you. And I'm so glad that we are here, much later having a conversation, still connecting and still talking about our stories and our journeys and the healing journey and spirituality and all of the beauty that we can bring to the world because of this work.
Yeah, no, no, for sure. It's definitely a divine work. So the way I've laid this out for our conversation to play out is maybe starting a little bit about some of the things, challenges that you've been through. I know it's a lot, and I'm not sure where to even start. You tell me, I'll allow you to take me where you need to take me to make this inspiring for the people who are listening to this show.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to just do a pretty general overview, I guess, of some of the challenges that I've faced, because at least one of these I'm sure will be relatable. So I grew up in a very religious family. Every male on my father's side of the family, except for my father, was a preacher, and it really shaped my worldview, I have to say. So I grew up very afraid of hell. I mean, it was one of the stories that I heard about from the time that I was little. And, when it was Christmas time and everyone's gathered around the tree, I was listening to my grandfather tell stories about, exorcisms and demons and all these really terrifying, especially for a child, really terrifying things. And I was like, wow, I don't want to be going to hell. That sounds awful. And I also understood pretty quickly that I that my family had a different view of women in religion, and I think that shaped my worldview as well. They had different rules in the church, for example, like women couldn't be preachers. They weren't really supposed to be leaders. And my grandmother also spent a lot of time with me when I was growing up, and her view was one just where women are very subservient to men, definitely kind of making their plates first, doing the cooking, doing the cleaning, making sure that you're kind of quiet. And I really remember her raising me, and I'm just, trying to express my emotions as a child. And she's like, women don't do that. We don't get angry. So from a very young age, I just kind of like kept everything in. And when I would ask questions about religion, that was shut down pretty quickly. And it's like, this is what we believe, and you have to believe it or you're not going to get into heaven. So I learned not to be curious, not to ask a lot of questions about it. And that if I was asking questions, it meant that there was a chance that, God would disown me. So in my mind, God was this larger than life father figure who seemed pretty impossible to please. And fast forward to the ages of like 15 to 17, I entered my first relationship with my first serious boyfriend, my first love. Unfortunately, that relationship ended up being extremely toxic and abusive in absolutely every definition of the word. And I wish I would have understood at the time how abnormal that was, but instead I'd taken everything that I'd learned from a child of not really asking questions and really being subservient and, kind of defaulting to what the man or the male figure wants. And it was just kind of my natural tendency to do so. So for the longest time, I didn't even really question my abuse or think that it was unacceptable, and I defended it a lot. And luckily, that ended around age 17, but it was still about 2 years of my life that I went through that. And I still remember the first time that I saw this person, like that first time that I saw my boyfriend or the person that would become my boyfriend at that age. And I just walked into the room and I saw him for the first time, and immediately it felt like my stomach was going to like flip-flop, and my heart started racing, and I was immediately flushed. And I recognize now like it was a very fear-based reaction, but I had never experienced love before. And so I'm just assuming that, oh, this must be love at first sight. And it really solidified for me that this is what I'm supposed to chase. And love is like this feeling that ended up being fear repeated over and over and over. And just really getting confused at that point in my life about what is the definition of romantic love? What does it look like? And for me, it also kind of mirrored this fear that I had of this God figure who I was constantly terrified of punishing me. And so it kind of that reflected in my relationship at that age. And I also remember, the first time that I felt or was kind of forced to speak to an adult about the abuse that I was experiencing in my relationship with him. And it was a school counselor, and something had alerted the school counselor that there was something going on. And I got called down to the counselor's office, and I walk in the room, and I just remember seeing him sitting there, and he's like bawling his eyes out because we were going through one of our many temporary breakups. And I expressed my truth to the counselor at the time, and his response was, you know, and I admitted some very and I don't know how much we want to get into all of the gory details here, but I admitted some very scary, like physical abuse that I had gone through. And his response was, well, just look at him. Can't you just be nice to him so we can move on? And so my first response, like the first response that I received from an adult telling my story was to continue staying small, to continue not questioning, to continue like defaulting to the man. And that was just reinforcing the pattern that had been set up for me my entire life. Shortly after that, though, that relationship ended. And about a year later, I started dating my ex-husband. So I was still in high school when we started dating. I was 18 years old, and he was really nice to me, and if, by nice, I mean, like we didn't get into fights. He was very easygoing. And I was like, wow, this is what a relationship is supposed to look like. And I was just like, this is the best man in the entire world. And I don't want to say anything bad about him, like so much love to him. But at that time, I had no idea what trauma was. I had no idea that I had gone through some pretty significant events in my life. I had no idea that I had a lot that I needed to heal from. But I entered this relationship and that continued, all the way through college. We got engaged, we got married before I graduated college. And one thing that my ex-husband and I really loved to do, we spent a lot of time drinking together. And I didn't realize at that time how much that was just me masking my pain and masking all the trauma and not really taking a deep look at my life. And I remember when we decided to set the date and get married, a really big influence for me in getting married it was this fear that I knew I'm kind of in from my childhood religious lens. I'm living in sin. I'm living with a man that I'm not married to, and I was very afraid of, backlash from an angry God about that. And it really pushed me to want to get married quickly, and so I did. I don't think that it's surprising to anyone that 5 years after getting married, it would end in divorce. When all of this trauma and all of this time spent not healing, all of this time spent, over consuming alcohol, and all of this time spent not analyzing myself in any way kind of came to a head, and it led to a divorce. But one really interesting thing I will say that in the universe is funny in this way is shortly before my marriage ended, and before I would have even thought that my marriage ending could be a factor, my ex-boyfriend from high school, who had abused me all those years, moved in next door to my husband and I. And I just remember walking outside, seeing him standing in my driveway, and I just like immediately wanted to vomit. I was like, how can this person, like, I don't even live in the same city, how can this person be standing in my driveway right now? And it really just launched me into a spiral, which eventually ended in the end of my marriage. And there's so much more to that, but just kind of want to fast forward a little bit. It did not take very long for me to keep repeating my patterns. And I found myself in another very abusive relationship after my marriage ended. And it was me being with a person who was an exact mirror of the person I had dated in high school who had abused me, and in some ways, even significantly worse. And I don't know exactly what it was that caused it to click for me, that caused me to finally see the patterns. But as soon as I did, like as soon as that blind was removed, all I knew was like, I need to end this. So I completely ghosted. I completely ran away, and I immediately started the process of trying to heal. And it took so much work. I had no idea where to start. I had no idea who I was. My entire life kind of seemed like a lie up until that point. And all I had were these really big emotions that I couldn't place, and I had no idea what to do with them. So I started writing. And that was the only way I knew how to get some of the emotions out, to really kind of move them through my body and start trying to make sense of my life. Because I'd been writing ever since I was a little girl. But as soon as the abuse started in high school, that completely stopped. When I went to college, I graduated with an English degree because I couldn't help it. I loved writing. It was something that I was still pursuing. And in that moment in my life, even though it was kind of an illusion, I felt a little safe enough to start exploring that again. But that quickly ended after college. And this was the point in my life where I was like, okay, this is the one thing I know I like. And it's the one place that I feel like I can actually express myself. So I let myself do that. Um, and it took me completely hitting rock bottom. And it took me completely losing any grasp of who I was to finally get back to just this one thing that I could call my own, this one thing that I knew that I was doing for myself and for no one else. I started going to therapy after I spent some time writing, and I was like, oh, I have a lot here that I really need to figure out because I mean, I had a lot of trauma to process, and I had no idea where to even begin. And it kind of forced me onto my healing journey. And we can get into some of this later, but that involves, a lot of different types of therapy. It involves a lot of journaling and writing and exploring that in different ways. And it involves a ton of solo travel. And I, went full nomad for a while. And then that has really forced me into my spiritual journey and where I feel like the true healing really began. So yeah, that's the gist of the background. I'm sorry, I feel like that was
Um,
a lengthy
Good.
explanation, but I just kind of wanted to get all of that out there and we can let it unfold as it wants to.
No, for sure, for sure. It's not, most times instances just hit us one after the other without even realizing that these are patterns that we're calling into our life because of our own programming and not even realizing that there's a program that even exists there. Where do you even begin to peel these layers? And lucky for you that you had writing as a gift that you used to help yourself, piece together all the different things that were showing up in your life. So again, it takes a lot of courage to come this far. So I'm glad you shared everything because this is something that, people, they may be stuck in a storm that they don't realize. And a story like this will help them figure out, okay, let me piece certain things and let me get inspired by Brittany's story. And I think I'm glad you touched on all these different aspects at the length that you did. So I want to thank you for that. I want to move into a little bit of that solo travel because, Brittany, I've heard this from many people. Like solo travel, a lot of women who have been through some of these hardships, they feel solo travel helps them unlearn a lot of things that has held them back. And I know that's made a big impact in your life as well. So, tell me what were some of those experiences like? What are the places you went to? Where can someone start if they don't know what solo travel is? And if they want to
Yeah.
start that, how can they find courage to do that?
Yeah. Well, in the process of, trying to find myself, I decided to do the one thing I knew I needed, and it was something that my ex-husband and I had argued about quite a bit was I feel like I need to get out. I need to go see the world. One thing that I did in college because I just felt really called to was I'd spent a summer semester studying in Spain because I just knew that going out and experiencing the world in a different way was something that was really important to me. And, over and over again, I tried to do that while I was in my marriage. It was just something that we couldn't agree on making a priority, so it didn't happen. And once I felt a little bit of freedom to be able to, oh wait, this is now my life, and I'm the only one that's making decisions for myself right now. I don't have to rely on another person to make a decision for me. I sold out all of my things and I decided I'm just gonna go, and I'm not sure what that looks like quite yet. It was really terrifying because I'd never done anything on my own before. And I just want to acknowledge the fear that pops up because it's real. And yet there's just this calling that knows that, like for me, specifically for me, there was just this calling that said, I have to do this. Is just something I'm feeling so called to do. This such a desire. And if I'm not going to make it happen for myself, no one else is going to. And so I actually planned a trip to Hawaii was my first trip that I wanted to plan. I wanted to spend 3 months there. And I had sold all my stuff. I wasn't living anywhere anyway. I just got divorced. I was kind of couch surfing at that point, trying to figure out where I wanted to go, where I wanted to live. And then I realized I just want to go. I don't really want to live anywhere specifically. And then COVID happened. So that threw a little bit of a wrench in my plans. I didn't get to go to Hawaii, but I did get to make the decision to do a lot of travel within the United States at that time. And I'd found a couple of different friends that were also willing to do a little bit of exploration with me. And doing those small trips with friends at first, just to places that were very remote places, we went to the desert, we went to Arizona because everything is closed. You can't really go anywhere. So let's just go where there are no people. But doing those little small trips gave me a little boost of confidence. I got to really see, like, okay, well, how are these people who are a little better at traveling making it work? And trying to navigate that during the pandemic was kind of a new experience for everyone, no matter how well traveled you were. But um, eventually, once the world started opening back up, one of the first trips I took for myself was it was a retreat that I booked in Sicily, and it was a writing and yoga retreat. So it was right up my alley. I mean, writing was involved, and I had done some yoga in my life, not a ton up to that point, but I was really excited because I knew that there was going to be this aspect of it that I could connect with on a physical level, and then there was the writing aspect as well. And I was just like, I don't really care. I just want to go hang out with a bunch of people who kind of like writing and see how that feels. And I met so many amazing women there. And I would really recommend if someone is seeking travel, seeking exploration, and they don't really have anyone to go with, they're not really sure where to start. Finding a retreat is a really easy way to kind of start diving into those waters if that's something that you can do, because it's going to be guided for you, it's going to be planned for you. And you're going to meet so many like-minded people that it's just going to help build these feelings of safety when you are traveling. I met people there that I am still friends with to this day. And it was the first time that I met a group of spiritually aligned women. And they really influenced me, and they were so strong, and they had all, gone through major challenges in their lives, and I could relate to them on a really deep level. And because we were going there for this spiritual experience, everyone just really dived in. The vulnerability what the people showed up with was incredible. And because they were so open, it really allowed us to create connections, really deep connections so quickly. So I highly recommend for people who aren't really sure where to start to look for a retreat that may be aligned for you. Um, but, other travel that I did outside of the US. There was Spain, Sicily that I was in, but I'd spent a lot of time in places like Italy, a lot of time there, Poland, Mexico, Iceland. Most of my solo travel was in the United States because I do did for work have to stay in the United States. So at that time, I could work from anywhere just as long as it was within the United States. Um, the trips that I took by myself, I think, were my favorite, though. I love meeting friends. I love going to places and seeing different things around the world. But it was this act of being by myself that really empowered me the most. And places within the US that I felt extremely connected to that really influenced me as a creative person or as a spiritual person, and just really helped shape my connection to the world. Places like San Diego. That was just a place where I could felt like I could really just relax and
Mhm.
just kind of be myself and just take in the environment. Asheville, and Asheville unfortunately did have the hurricane recently, and I haven't been there since, so I'm not sure what the state of Asheville is right now, but the artistic community in Asheville
Yes,
is
oh my God.
just unbeatable. I absolutely love it. Savannah, Georgia was a place that really helped me feel connected to history and the history of the country. Page, Arizona was one of the first places that I visited where I was like, am I on a different planet right now? This is just so gorgeous and it doesn't look like anything else that I've seen. It's just a really beautiful place to explore if you want something a little otherworldly. Um, Mount Shasta in California has been like so valuable and important for me in my spiritual studies. And all of the Pacific Northwest just feels like pure magic if you really want to connect with the outside world and you want that nature inspired magic. The Pacific Northwest is hard to beat for that. New Orleans, there's something about New Orleans that I absolutely love. I just feel it feels a little like witchy. It feels artsy. It feels like there's music going on. I've never been to New Orleans in a time of year where it's super busy and they have like those, Mardi Gras parades. I like going when it's an off season and it's a little cooler and there's really not much going on, and just kind of walking down Bourbon Street and having it to yourself and just feeling like you're the only one in the French Quarter. It's one of the places that I love to go when I want writing inspiration, because I just feel connected to the creative part of myself when I'm in New Orleans. And then lastly, and definitely not least, was Denver, Colorado. And I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, but Denver, Colorado is where I live now. And it's because it's the place I kept returning to over and over again. I think that this city checks off so many boxes for me. The people here are very open, and the connection to nature is also so strong. There's, for me, a never-ending list of ways to feel connected and things to do here. And that's where I decided to eventually put down roots. And I've been here for about 2 years now, and I am absolutely so thrilled that this is a choice and decision that I made for my life. And even more so, I'm so glad that I gave myself the opportunity to go experience a lot of different places in the world, and more specifically in the United States. So that way I knew what I like for myself and what were the right decisions for me as an individual that didn't have anything to do with somebody else. So it felt so empowering to be able to make that decision for myself. And that was so important on my healing journey for sure.
Yeah, no, no, I'm thank you. You shared a really good, a synopsis of all the different places people can use as part of their bucket list. Because you don't know where to start, especially for somebody who hasn't traveled much. And I have been to many of the places that you mentioned myself, and I could relate to all the different things that you did. Again, New Orleans again speaks to me because that's where my friends took me when I turned 40. So that was a always be a special place for me. Uh, a,
Amazing.
a big milestone celebration where I was able to, again, peel certain aspects about myself too. But I get what you mean by saying it has everything. It has that witchy, artsy, whimsical, and with beautiful music, jazz, beautiful food,
Yes,
and
the food.
amazing. Yes, yes, and then you find people from all walks of life welcome there, just simply being who they are and being happy, just doing what they want to do. So that's one place I agree with, and I'm glad you made your roots in Denver because I love Denver too. And all of the places that you mentioned, Arizona is still in my bucket list. I need to do that one of these days.
Arizona really blew my mind. I love Arizona, and there are a handful of different places that I mean I've spent probably 2 months, like 2-ish months in Arizona, and it's it's just so beautiful. I've never been there during the summer, so maybe I would change my mind when the heat hits, but when it's, you know, when it's a little cooler and you just want to be outside and you want to feel connected to nature in a way like the desert I fell in love with, and I was so surprised how much I would actually love it.
I'm
Highly
glad to
recommend.
hear that. The other thing I wanted to go back to is the retreat aspect of it that you mentioned and how retreats can help you, especially if you're trying to do this on your own and this is an easy way for you to, build a community. And looks like you have built a solid set of friends by attending these retreats. And our previous conversation that we were just talking, you mentioned something about moon dancing ritual. I'm guessing you did it in one of these retreats. How was
Yeah,
that
so I think
practice?
they would not call it themselves a retreat. They like very specifically say that it's an indigenous prayer ceremony. And this is something that when I said Mount Shasta has been very important for me, especially in my spiritual growth. Um, it's an indigenous prayer. Uh, it's from the Mexica tradition, or like the Aztec tradition, and it was brought to Mount Shasta, and there it's such a beautiful ceremony where women from all over the world gather and for 4 nights dance under the moon at the top of the mountain and dance from moonrise to moonset, and during the day we're doing different events, so we're kind of sacrificing sleep for this amount of time, not really eating a ton of food and just letting the dance be our prayer. And I am so surprised by the intention, the beauty of the ceremony, and how I've always felt connected to the earth and I've always felt connected to nature. But until I went to this indigenous prayer ceremony, I had no idea how connected a person could be to the world around them. And absolutely everything they did was blessed and prayed over. And they had so much respect for the ceremony. They had so much respect for the prayer. They had so much respect for the space that they were holding. And we also do temazcales or sweat lodges twice a day. And just listening to the elders talk and share their wisdom, it has been one of the most transformative events of my life. I went the first year as a just to be in service. So I
Mhm.
went to help them prepare their teas, and I prepared food for the elders that were dancing in the ceremony. And just being able to witness and hold space for that was absolutely magical. the energy you could actually feel in the air. It's like tangible almost. And just everyone pouring their energy into being a beautiful representation of spirituality in their community and really walking the path. And the next year I came back and it was my first year as a dancer. And I've committed to dancing for at least 4 years in the ceremony. So this will be my second year as a dancer. But my first year, I had the most beautiful experience. And the first night that I was dancing, I knew that I was going to the dance with the intention of just really opening my heart space and trying to learn how to lead from my heart more, get out of my head and stop trying to overanalyze things and just be more in heart-centered and heart-focused or like heart open person. And so I wanted just clarity on that in my life. And the first night I was dancing, what I did is I just was like, okay, well, I'm going to imagine that I'm going to move my eyes from my head and try to move them down to my heart space. What would it be like if while I'm dancing this night, I'm trying to like see from my heart and feel and experience the world from my heart, So I kept trying to imagine I'm moving through the dance by looking out of my heart, which I don't know where I got this from. It's just something that came to me while I started dancing. And I was like, I'm going to give it a try. And it was really difficult to keep trying to move my awareness from my mind and into my heart. And it really brought me into my body. And I'm moving through the dance and I'm feeling my heart and I'm imagining that it's opening and I keep trying to practice this and it keep returning to it over and over. It's like when you're just starting breath work or you're just starting meditation, you're just like return to the breath, return to the breath. I kind of felt like I was doing that, but it was with my heart, like return to the heart, return to the heart. And the more that I did that, the more it felt like the energy in my womb area was kind of activating. I felt like it was getting really warm and I was like what is this? The more that I want to move through my heart, the more that it feels like my womb wants to be activated. And then just immediately I had this like knowing that if I really want to be able to see and be connected, like third eye, if I really want to open my third eye, I have to figure out how to open the connection between my heart space and my womb. And so that was a major lesson for me that I received. And so for since the dance, I've been really trying to figure out for me, what does it mean to have a connected heart and womb space? What does that look like for me? And that's been my journey this year, something that I've really been focused on. And a lot of things that have come up pretty recently for me even was, in my work, and I'm peeling back the layers, and we're always peeling back layers of our healing. But as I'm really peeling back these layers, one of the things that's just really it keeps coming up, and I really think that for me, this is ancestral. For me, it's a lineage thing, or and maybe even a collective thing for women. I'm not sure, but there was so much shame in my body, so much shame in my body, and whether that be something that I brought in from a past life or whether that be epigenetic, I'm just carrying this shame of the women from my lineage. I'm not sure. I know it feels that deep in my body. And I know that, especially with my divorce and especially with the abusive relationships that I've been in, it's really reinforced this shame. And I met with a coach. We were exchanging sessions with each other, and she does ancestral practices. And had me, she was like, "What do you want to work on today?" And I was like, I want to address this shame." And she really had me get into my body and really figure out, okay, where is this shame living in your body? And almost immediately I knew, like, it's in my womb. It's in my womb. And she's like, and what does it feel like? What is it doing? And all I could see was like this energy in my womb, and it was so heavy. It was like this ball, and I could feel it like actively pulling down. And I was like, no, that's the wrong way. Like, I want my womb to be coming out to my heart. Like, I can't have it pulling down. And I realized it's this shame that I'm carrying in my body and that I still need to, like, that I need to release, that is going to help me move that energy up into my heart so I can really have a good flow and connection between my heart and my womb space. So she had me do this really interesting practice where she asked me to invite a part of myself that was really connected to this shame into my body. And I kind of immediately went to a past life version of me, and I brought her in. And then she had me, do some work and speak with that part of myself for a moment. But then she did this interesting practice where she asked me to invite my higher self in. So she's like, imagine that on the left side of your body is this past life version of yourself, and on the right side of your body is your higher self. And now let them have a conversation. And what was almost immediately birthed out of that was one, my higher self lives in my heart. It just felt so true. And I knew immediately that what I needed to do was get this shame up to my heart, because my past self was like, I don't know what else I need to do to be forgiven. And my higher self was like, you don't need to do anything to be forgiven. You just need to love. And I think that really spoke to so many parts of myself, just not just with the shame, but even going all the way back to my childhood. Like I was telling you earlier, with that religious influence that I was having, like there's always this level of shame, that not just from being a woman, but this level of shame because of the way I perceived God had been judging me my whole life. And so and this really needing to be forgiven and not being sure how was a major theme for me all throughout my childhood and in my religious upbringing. And then after all of the abuse and the divorce and everything and the way that transpired, like, how do I forgive myself? And my higher self almost kind of like invited me to just breathe in and create more space in my womb. And as I was breathing in, I could feel like this shame lifting up to my heart from my womb, and like I could see it transmuting. And it was just this beautiful experience of really finding ways to bring love to the shame, bring love to all of the things that I was still carrying with me. And I am so thankful that that was inspired by my previous moon dance, and I cannot wait for what year two is going to bring me. It's just absolutely beautiful watching these lessons continue unfolding throughout the year. It's been 8 months since the moon dance, and I'm still learning from it every single day. So that was a very long answer to your question.
No, that's good. I'm glad. It's good because you are sensing and moving into it. And that's one thing I noticed about you when we did the past life regression work together. And I've worked with so many women, and very few of them open up or are so in tuned to what is going on inside of them. And the extent and the degree to which you are sharing that is an inspiration for people to connect at that level with themselves, which is something that we generally don't. We mask ourselves with so many other things, like we get into other binge habits, be it shopping, be it watching television, or being addicted to social media, or just we close ourselves off, and these types of exercises help you open up And I'm so glad that you expressed it at the degree that you did, because I think that'll inspire someone to, connect back at that level to help open up and to release, like you said, shame. How do you take shame and transmute that into love? And that was an amazing way for you to, explain to someone as an example, right? So thank you for sharing that. I'm glad you did.
Yeah.
Um, I also want to touch a little bit about the writer circle that you have. I know a lot of this came from your solo travel, moon dancing, and just to give someone a perspective of when they go through this journey, what gets birthed out of it, and whatever comes out, how does it shape someone else's life, other people that you touch because of the work that you've done on yourself. So if you can share that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I I mean, I love writing so much. And and like I said, it's something that I've been doing since I was a little kid, and then, life kind of happened and I got away from it for a while. But I've been attending writing circles specifically way before I started running them myself. They're definitely a staple of the writers community and honestly really helped keep me on track in getting back into this modality. I just want to give a quick shout out to my teachers, Ray McNeese, Victoria Erickson, Alex Klingenberg, and so many others. I was also an English major in college, so I attended a lot of writing meetings and events then as well. So I've been studying this for a really long time. Um, the main influence for why I decided to start running my own writing circles was the first moon dance ceremony that I attended actually, because I had I had writing, which felt so important because ever since, once my divorce happened, even before I got into spirituality, it gave me a place to have a voice. It gave me a place to really authentically express myself on a page and then go in front of other people, and I was in the most vulnerable place of my life. I had just been divorced. I had just gone through, more traumatic experiences that I was just in the very beginning stages of processing. And all I know is that I was kind of like putting all of this onto a page, and then I would show up in front of other people and I would either have them read my work or I would read my work to them. And thinking about that now, I want to go back and applaud my younger self because that is a great act of vulnerability. And in the act of vulnerability, in the act of being vulnerable, I actually started letting myself be seen for who I am for the first time, maybe in my entire life. And the amazing thing that happened, and the thing that I love about writing circles so much, is that every other writer is also somebody who is willing to be vulnerable with you. They've also poured their heart out onto a page and shared it with you. And it's this space where you're kind of like just opening yourself up to another human in a way that you don't normally do. You when you're at work and you're just having passing conversations, you're not bearing your soul most of the time, but these circles are a specific place where you're starting to do that. And wow, that was so healing because when I could share the ugliest part of what I thought was the ugliest parts of myself in that moment, and to have that received by others and have them say, I see you. And here's my story as well. I've met, some of my best friends from those beginning writing circles when I first started being really authentic and sharing my story. And I couldn't believe how many other women were coming to me and saying, this is my story too. And I can relate and I've experienced the same thing. And now I'd gone from a place of being so alone and feeling so isolated and like no one's ever going to understand me. I've completely become something almost like less than human. And now I'm turning around and I'm speaking to other people. I'm understanding that this is the human experience. This is exactly what it means to be human. And now I'm sharing this with other people. And in that act of sharing, I'm starting to heal. So writing was so important for me. And then I went to the moon dance and I really understood a connection with nature on a completely different level. And I was like, how am I going to keep myself accountable to these things that I keep saying are so important in my life? And so what I decided to do was I started hosting writing circles on the full moon and the new moon as a way to keep myself aligned with the natural rhythms of the moon, but as a way to also keep myself accountable for showing up for my writing practice on a very consistent basis. And I found that there were many other people who wanted to do the same thing. And that expanded, and I went from just hosting writing circles to I ran a retreat last year. So not only have I attended multiple retreats, but I've also now run my own retreat. And writing was a large portion of that retreat as well. And the way that it can just bring people together and get people to open up in a really safe space is profound. So, yeah, it has really changed and shaped the way that I live my life. And it's something that I just feel like is so important to the healing movement that I want to keep bringing it to the world. Specifically, I know that one of the things I noticed was as I'm running these circles and as I'm hosting these retreats and people are starting to be really vulnerable. And I'm noticing that big things are coming up for people. And and a lot of those things included traumas. And I wanted to be able to hold space for that ethically and really help people transform that. And that's how I ended up in the program with you because I was like, I know that this is something I want to bring to the world. How can I do that in an even more ethical way so that people are not only opening up and being vulnerable with other people, but if something comes up that really needs to be transformed, how can I facilitate that in a better way that actually makes a transformation? And so I met you, I went to the program, learned so many beautiful ways to do that, but also have created my own specific writing method. And one of the main reasons for doing that was because I think writers can, and artists in general, creatives in general, can really get stuck in the space of, I'm experiencing a lot of pain and a lot of emotion that I don't know what to do with. So I'm going to use my creativity as an outlet for that. And that is so beautiful. It is a beautiful way to move energy. But I think there's a very specific and intentional way to use that to not only release a little bit of energy, but let's not get stuck in the negative. Like, how can we actually start transmuting this? How can we actually start transforming this into something that will help us be better creators in our lives? And so that's how my writing method specifically was created.
Yeah, what struck me the most in what you just shared, Brittany, is how you started on yourself, and now the almost like the learning is now being done for someone else. So that's a beautiful transition you've made. So now you're almost evolved into this other person for in order to touch other people in the most beautiful way that you can. And I'm so glad that we met each other. And I think this was a beautiful community that Dr. Aaron built through Society, brought a lot of like-minded women like us who have interest in spirituality and helping us figure out ways to bring those gifts and to be able to serve others outside of just your typical 9 to 5 job. So it's beautiful to hear your story and how you've transformed that. So tell me, after all these experiences you've had, Brittany, how is it helping you in terms of how are you showing up? Like, because I know you were around community and family that put you in a place where there were a lot of rigid boundaries. And now that you've opened yourself up to a different person almost, but you still need to hold on to the other pieces in your life. And after the transformation, how are you showing up to those people in your life now?
Yeah, it's so interesting. I'm surprised by the amount of times, my sister has texted me and just, you seem like a different person now. Well, I am. And in my opinion, like, thank goodness for that. But yeah, that's a really great question. I would say, I mean, it's drastically changed the way that I show up in so many ways. One of the biggest lessons that I've learned in all of this is that I spent so much of my life playing small and trying to please other people. And it didn't matter who they were. There was this feeling of being liked and being safe and being liked and really not expressing who I am. And now that is no longer my story. So I've seen the power of who I am. And I know the power of community and the importance of having people around you that have similar values and similar hearts, that are leading also from this heart-centered space. And the more that I step into that, the more that heart-centered people are called to my space, and the more that I can set nice and healthy boundaries with people who maybe aren't living their lives that way. And so it's really just, I'm choosing not to abandon myself to fit into other people's worlds. This is my one opportunity to be a unique divine expression of a source, and I have so much more power and authority than I ever knew was possible. When it comes to my family, I love my family so much. I know that there is nothing but love there. And the more that I work on myself, the more that I have compassion for where they are on their journeys. And I am kind of at a point where with my family, I'm picking my battles. And as so much like as they understand that I'm coming from a loving space, and when they're able to hear me, and you kind of get really intuitive about when that happens, when they're able to hear me and when they're open to a real conversation, I'm willing to have that conversation with them. And just knowing when it's not going to serve me, and it's not going to serve them, to maybe kind of walk away for a moment and not have to respond. And that's okay too. And so I'm learning how to not deny myself, but I also can just have compassion for where they are and understand. And I truly do know, luckily for me, I know that my family loves me deeply. And I know that my family wants the best for me deeply. And so it's easy to have compassion for them where they're at. And I'm very lucky with that. And I do speak my truth. I'm never speaking something that is not my truth. But sometimes it's just easier to be an observer in a situation. With my community, I'm showing up in service and surrounding with myself with people who choose to do the same. And, you know, it is really helping me move forward when I surround myself with people who are heart-centered and they have big goals of helping heal the world and doing this kind of work and are spiritually involved, because it just keeps pushing me forward and we lift each other up all of the time. It's exponential growth. And I'm so grateful for that.
Cool. Thank you, Brittany. So I'll just come to the last question, which is a common question I ask everyone. So tell me, Brittany, what is the truth you want to leave behind?
The truth that I want to leave behind is that you are a master creator of your life. And what that means to me, and something that I didn't realize for a long time. I always thought that I was a very responsible person and that I was trying to follow the rules and trying to do what I thought I was supposed to do. And understanding that is different than taking 100% responsibility for your life. And understanding that you have the opportunity to create the life that you want to and have an impact on the world around you, and to not let the voice that says, I can't do it or I can't make a difference affect you, because you can and you will make a difference in the world around you. And to never diminish that calling, because it is placed there for a reason.
Absolutely. No, well said, Brittany. Tell us, how can people connect with you?
Yes, so the best way to connect with me is to follow me on Instagram. My Instagram is at Britt, BRITT .McCauley, MCCAULEY. So it's at Britt.McCauley. That's the best way to follow me. All of my updates will be there. Links to anything I've got going on will be there. Getting on my email list, that will all be on my Instagram. So that's the best way to reach out to me. Feel free to follow, send me a message. I would be happy to respond.
So thank you for sharing. Then I'll put that on the in the description box as well, so people, if they wanted to connect with you, they can. And again, Brittany, I want to thank you for joining us today. And I want to end the session. I want to take a deep breath, and I want to recognize that everything in life, all the pain, all the heartbreak, all the challenges that have been through, has led us to this beautiful place that we're in right now. And I definitely want to give gratitude for everything that we've experienced, because that is shaping us to be who we are today. And we're leaving behind stories and lessons that will inspire many people along the way. So, with this, I certainly want to end this moment and know that this was a beautiful session. And thank you for sharing. It's a great space to hear your story of transformation. And it just shows us what is possible on the other side of healing, and all the paths that opens up to us, which is limitless possibilities and potential. And I hope that this conversation goes to all the right people who need to listen to it the most, and may it land in their hearts when they're ready to receive it. And as together we say, so it is.
So it
And
is.
with this, we conclude our podcast for today.
Thank you so much. Thank you. This was an
Absolutely.
absolute pleasure.
Yeah, yeah. And I also wanted to mention is, if anyone would like to recommend a guest for the show or join me on a podcast, feel free to DM me. I'm happy to work with you. So with this, I just want to say bye for now.